Hey guys, welcome back to today's video. Today is Saturday, November 30th, 2019, and today we're going to be looking at a 2020 electoral projection between Mayor Pete Buttigieg from Indiana versus, of course, the incumbent president, President Donald Trump. So this one is not too requested. Obviously, there are other Democratic candidates that are higher than Pete Buttigieg in terms of nationwide polling data, and typically I go with the top 3 to 4, and Pete Buttigieg in this case would be the 4th place candidate nationwide. The reason why I'm doing this video is because yesterday I covered Elizabeth Warren's drop in recent primary data and attributed much of her loss to the result of Mayor Pete Buttigieg gaining in a number of states, becoming the first place contender in both Iowa and New Hampshire, the first 2 states that will vote for the 2020 Democratic nomination process. And if we take a look at some other national polling data, Pete Buttigieg is starting to be taken a lot more seriously nationwide. A lot of you guys have seen this. I've seen this in the national media. Pete Buttigieg definitely gets a little bit more of a spotlight because he would be what we would consider a first-time candidate. He would be the first openly gay president in the United States. If you remember back 2016, there was a big push for Hillary Clinton, mainly for part of it because she would be the first female president ever in United States history. Again, we have Elizabeth Warren on the ballot here as well, but also if you take a look at Pete Buttigieg, he would also be another first. But keep in mind, he's still a white mayor from the state of Indiana. That isn't exactly a minority in terms of the way that people are viewed nationwide. But he does have a pretty good shot at the presidency. Now, he has very little appeal to African-American voters, and, that could just be a combination of what he stands for or his history as a mayor from the state of Indiana. But also, if you take a look at his support, it's doing very well amongst white voters. Now, where would that matter? If you take a look at the Rust Belt, if you take a look at his home state of Indiana, we're not talking too much about African-American voters. Yes, they are there. They definitely come out to support Democratic candidates when we're talking about areas like Detroit or Milwaukee. When it comes down to the presidential election, when anything and everything is close, there's always something to look at where Democrats could have improved or Republicans could have improved. But if you take a look at, let's say, 2016, one of the main working points for Donald Trump was the white working class. Not the black working class, not the Asian working class. It was the white working class. And, that's part of the electorate that really has flipped from Obama all the way to Trump in just 4 short years. And it really all depends, this election for Democrats, where they end up in 2020. These Democrats can win without African-American voters coming out in Obama-type numbers. It's not going to be the biggest victory. It may be a narrow victory, but it's a victory regardless, and it's 4 years of a Democratic president. When we're talking about a number of these states, regardless of Pete Buttigieg's appeal to African-American voters, he's going to win a number of these states regardless. States like my home state of Maryland, even though there's a very large composition of African-American voters here, or if we talk about minorities like Hispanic voters in California or New Mexico, these people are still going to go ahead and vote for the Democratic candidate. Most of the time, they will vote for whoever has a D by their name, and same goes for the Republican states. We could throw Pete Buttigieg on the ballot as a Republican, and almost all of the states I'm characterizing now would vote for the Republican in that case, which would be Pete Buttigieg. Now, taking a look at this nationwide map, again, same type of numbers that you see in the start of every election prediction on my channel, mainly because the American electorate doesn't like to change up, but I'm going to leave Indiana blank for just right now, just because Pete Buttigieg is from that state, but at the same time, again, we still have Mike Pence's weight on that state, and it's still inherently a Republican state based off previous election data and what we are expecting for 2020. So that puts Donald Trump at 114 electoral votes, puts Pete Buttigieg at 187. That leaves 237 toss-up electoral votes. Now, when I mention Pete Buttigieg doing better with white voters, that's not to say he won't win any African-American voters. Again, a lot of the electorate loves to stay the same because they have identified with a political party for such a long time. Disregard states like Kentucky and West Virginia with more Democratic registered voters. That's a whole nother topic for a whole nother day. But for example, my home state of Maryland, regardless of who is going to be on that ballot as a Democrat, my state will award its 10 electoral votes to that Democratic candidate. When you go over to a state like Wyoming, you could literally have a rock on the Republican side, and they would win. The Republican candidate would win then. Really, anyone could be put on with that R name in a number of these states and still win in those states. Same thing goes for these Democratic states. America is very partisan. You don't really see that many crossover votes, which is exactly why we will probably never see a Ronald Reagan landslide type victory for any of these candidates in the foreseeable future. Maybe it's possible in 30 years from now. I'm not seeing it happen as of right now. But let's take a look at some of these swing states. Now, Donald Trump, I do believe, is going to win in areas where Pete Buttigieg, I definitely think, is going to be lacking. He's not going to be able to drive out Latino voters like, let's say, for example, Julian Castro could have, or other candidates like Beto O'Rourke, especially for Texas. And also Arizona, I don't see Pete Buttigieg doing too well there either, but still, it's a swing state. I would say it's lean Republican. That shoots Donald Trump up to 163 electoral votes. And again, like I had previously mentioned, I don't expect too much turnout on the African-American side for Pete Buttigieg, which means that states like North Carolina and Georgia are starting to get out of reach. Now, they are still lean GOP states because, again, these are still swing states, and I do expect some of the whiter population to go ahead and vote for Pete Buttigieg a little bit more, even if some of them may be traditionally conservative. For example, states like Georgia or even Arizona, where they haven't been too happy with the president's performance nationwide in the White House. They showed it in the 2018 midterm elections. They actually showed it back in 2016 when these states moved over closer to the Democrats than when Obama was running in these states, and Obama did phenomenal with African-American voters. But just taking a look at both North Carolina and Georgia, well, those states I still expect to be close, but I still expect them to be Trump victories. Now, I characterized Indiana as a toss-up state, but I, in all honesty, do not expect it to be one. I expect it to be likely. I don't think it's going to be a blowout for Donald Trump. I do expect a margin between 5 to 15%, probably on the high end of that spectrum. But Pete Buttigieg definitely could make a case for winning there, but it's still a very partisan state. It's going to be very, very hard to go ahead and reach out there. But going over to Nevada and Colorado, though I don't think that Buttigieg has the best appeal to them, I still think he's going to narrowly edge them out, especially with its history. It's probably going to end up being Democratic states. Same thing like the state of Virginia, but again, Northern Virginia pretty much dictates how that state's going to go, so I'd expect it to go to Pete Buttigieg. Going over to New Hampshire, I expect that one to be likely. He's doing phenomenal in the primary there. Same thing I would expect in the state of Maine. First district safe, at large likely. I actually could see a narrow Pete Buttigieg victory here in the 2nd congressional district. Now, I know this is a flip, but neither Trump or Pete Buttigieg have a regional advantage here. I would say Trump has a little bit more just because his New York status up there, but that doesn't have too much of an influence as it would if, let's say, Bernie Sanders or Elizabeth Warren, both in neighboring states to New Hampshire. They would definitely have much more of a regional influence up there than Pete Buttigieg, but I still expect a victory there, especially with his popularity amongst Democratic voters, white Democratic voters. He also is pretty popular amongst all white voters, which I think is pretty interesting. That puts Buttigieg at 223, Donald Trump at 205 electoral votes, leaving 110 tossable electoral votes. Now, going over to Florida, again, this is a Donald Trump state. I do think he's going to narrowly win there. It's going to be close regardless again. I think that it's going to be a narrow margin. I meant to put this one as lean, not tilt. And I know a lot of you guys are probably figuring out what this electoral map is going to end up as. And I know, again, I know it can be annoying. I'm the one making these maps, and a lot of these elections are probably going to end up the same. A lot of these candidates don't vary much in terms of their appeal. Even though they may appeal to certain states for different reasons, that's not impacting anything if it's the same states that they need to win. The Democratic Party's pathway to victory is through the Rust Belt, period. That's it. They need to win back those 3 states, retain the ones Hillary Clinton got. There's their pathway to the presidency. Wasting money on states like Iowa and Ohio and neglecting those 3 other states the same way Hillary Clinton did is a sure way for an 8-year Trump term overall. So Democrats definitely going to be focusing a lot there, which is exactly why since 2017 the main focus has been the Rust Belt. Exactly why headlines were discussing Pennsylvania's House flips, Pennsylvania's House redistricting, Michigan's governor flip, Michigan's Senate hold for the Democrats, Wisconsin's governor flip, Wisconsin's Senate hold, Minnesota's 2 Senate elections. These are areas that the Democrats know that they need to perform in, and exactly why they're going to target it. And a lot of these candidates, believe it or not, aren't going to win a number of swing states, but do have a very good shot at the presidency. let's take a look at this finalized electoral map. I don't want to drag this on too much longer. Nebraska's 2nd district, I actually think Pete Buttigieg could have a narrow victory here. I'm going to put this one in the lean column. He does sort of have a regional advantage here. He definitely could make that argument. I'm not seeing victories in Iowa and Ohio, though he does have that appeal to the white working class. I do think it's going to get very, very close. I don't think it's enough to flip states that were Republican +9, nearing +10 back in the last election, but he definitely could flip the 3 states that were pretty much R+1 back in 2016, narrowly going for President Trump in all 3 of those states, and Hillary Clinton won in the state of Minnesota. I expect a Pete Buttigieg victory there. But that finalizes this map at 280 electoral votes for Pete Buttigieg and 258 for Donald Trump. And like I said, the Democratic candidate can afford to lose almost every other swing state. He's losing in Arizona, Texas, and even though some of you may not argue that Texas is a swing state, anything below 10% when it comes down to 2020 is definitely going to get a little bit closer in this election. But Iowa, Ohio, in this case, Indiana, North Carolina, Georgia, Florida. I mean, Pete Buttigieg is practically losing everywhere but those 3 states, and that's all the Democrats really need. So again, I know a lot of you guys really don't like seeing this recurring electoral map, but you can't blame me. I could lie to you. I mean, what I would think would be lying to you guys, but I try not to. So this is how I genuinely believe the electoral map will turn out. So thank you guys for watching this video. Comment down suggestions below. I will be doing an election night coming up soon. I'm just waiting on a little bit more information for that. And I also do plan on having a full election night by the end of the year, so you guys can go ahead and check that out once it comes out. But yeah, so again, thank you guys for watching, and I will see you all tomorrow.